Hey guys, so this video is an idea that I got from one of my Origin friends, FS Force, who said, if there's two main mice that I recommend for Star Wars Battlefront, the SteelSeries Ikari Optical and the Logitech G400, why not do a comparison video of the two? So that's what this is. So I'll start out by saying I use the G400 for probably about 20,000 kills or so, and I have since switched to the SteelSeries Ikari Optical for about maybe the past 15,000 kills. I do like the Ikari more, but it's completely a personal preference. In fact, depending on who you are and what you like, the G400 could very well outperform this Ikari. So don't take my word for it. I'm just going to give you an analysis of both of them and then kind of talk about what I look for in a mouse and why the Ikari fit that description better for me. So I'll start out with the G400. So this is made by Logitech. Both these mice are discontinued, but this one is a lot easier to find. You can still find the G400S, which is the same thing but with like a blue design on the top. I have one sitting around here somewhere. I don't remember where I put it, but it's essentially the same shell and sensor and everything internally is the same. It just has a different texturing on the top. Oh, here it is. Here's the G400S. Yep, so you can see it's kind of a bluish with some white accents and stuff. This is a 5-button mouse, so you have left, right, middle mouse, and the two sides. It also has these 3 other buttons on the front here, and then scroll wheel. Everything is programmable through Logitech's gaming software, which is fantastic software. It's all rubberized along the sides and along the top here. The top, this gray area though, this is a bit more slippery, but it's kind of more of a hybrid glossy matte finish to it. It's a little bit in between. It's a palm grip mouse, so it's very comfortable for if you have large hands or if you do palm grip. You can claw it, and fingertipping sort of works. I personally think it's a little bit too big and heavy for fingertip, but it still works well. I have a 19.5 centimeter hand base to tip and then 10 centimeters across. So mine's maybe a little bit on the larger side, but not terribly large. It has a comfort groove here for your thumb, and then it has a ridge along this side for your ring finger. I really like this ridge. It makes it very easy to lift up if you're doing big mouse motions and playing at low sensitivity. There's 3 Teflon feet on the bottom. And then I guess going into the internals, also I gotta point out, because it is a palm grip mouse, this has a very high hump. I think it's nearly 4 centimeters from the bottom to the top, versus a lot of other mice are more in like the 3.5 centimeter range. So if you do have a large hand, you can palm it very easily and not have a whole bunch of overhang. You can see my grip with it. I'm fairly tight up on the mouse because it is a long and slender shape. And this is probably the mouse that I would more recommend for people. So the internals, it uses the Avago S3095 optical sensor, which is really good. Really high maximum tracking speed, no prediction, low amount of smoothing. It does kind of have a high-ish lift-off distance. That can be fixed a little bit with a tape trick. The switches in it are Omron D2FC-F-7Ns, so it has a soft but audible click that is responsive but kind of light. So yes, this is overall a terrific mouse, and I'd highly recommend it. I recommend this one more often than not. Also, the cable is a thin rubberized cable. This is an excellent cable. I love it. It doesn't snag on the mouse pad or anything. So then moving on to the SteelSeries Ikari Optical. So we have, again, it's another palm grip mouse, but this takes a different approach. It's not nearly as tall from the bottom to the top, but instead it's more wide. So you have wings over here on the side for your ring finger and your pinky finger, and then over here you have a good area for your thumb. On the top here, this is more glossy. I personally like glossy a little bit more, but if you have sweaty hands, then it might be a little bit slippery. I personally have a fan right in front that blows right at my hand while I'm playing, which is nice. The cable is braided. However, it's a very soft braid. I bought 2 Ikari Opticals used from eBay, so you know they might have a lot of use in them, which means that the cables have become softer over time. So maybe a newer one, that might be a problem with catching on your mouse pad, but for me it's been fine. Again, it's a 5-button mouse, so you have right, left, middle, and then you have forward and back. You have the 2 side buttons. There's a DPI changing button here, You can see the light switches. There is a bit of a delay to it, so like if you switch DPI, the mouse won't work until it, I guess, switches over. Personally, I don't find this as a problem because I keep it at the low or 800 DPI setting. There's also a high 1600 DPI setting. However, this is configurable in SteelSeries software, and I believe you can do different increments other than just 800 and 1600. The scroll wheel on this has both the scroll wheels have quite a bit of tactile feedback, which I like. I don't like scroll wheels that are a bit soft. I like to be able to feel each bump so that if I'm certain games, if you're switching between weapons, you want to be able to precisely do one scroll. This uses, oh, I guess I'll continue on with the outside. There's rubberized sides on the outside here, but again, this is glossy plastic. The switches in this are Omron D2FC-F-7Ns, just like the G400. So soft, tactile, lightweight. This uses the Avago A3060 sensor. So this is a little bit of a quote-unquote lower tier sensor. Doesn't have as high of a tracking speed. Still has high lift-off distance, which is probably, if I could fix one thing about the mouse, it'd probably be the lift-off distance, and then it would be the weight. It still has a fairly good maximum tracking speed. I think it's around 2.0 or 2.5 meters per second. I personally don't really track above 1.5 meters per second when I'm playing, so that's not a problem for me. This sensor does have a little bit of prediction, which I'll go into later, why I actually prefer that. It has 4 big old mouse feet on the bottom. I do like how this one has a mouse foot on both sides laterally versus this one only has one on the side here. I feel like it gives me a little bit more stability. I mean, it's honestly not that much of a difference. It does feel like the G400 can tilt a little bit if you kind of put most of your weight on that side of the mouse, but versus this one, it won't tilt unless you really lift it up. So, I guess that's a brief analysis of both the mice. Now to talk about why I use the Ikari Optical. So there's actually a few reasons, but they mostly boil down to how I rapid fire and my aiming. So first of all, talking about rapid firing, and going into the battle single player games, I can actually rapid fire more quickly with the G400. However, I personally feel like once I'm into servers, public servers where have 30 to 60 ping, it's more about the forgiveness of the of the internal components and whatnot, rather than the actual just how fast can I actually rapid fire it. With the Ikari Optical, the shell is actually a bit sloppily designed. You can see I'll go ahead and click this down, and then there's actually a bit of travel after I've already actuated the switch. So you can see the switch is actuated right now, but I'm still able to wiggle the shell quite a bit. Now, if you go over to the G400 and see the same thing, I can't quite. Yeah, I can't. Once I activate it, I can't really wiggle it around. So this feels much more precise. So for most people, this is actually a much better option. However, I find that sometimes when I'm in a blaster fight and I'm kind of doing more inconsistent clicking because it's an intense situation, or maybe I'm clicking harder, I find that extra sponginess actually helps me be a little bit more consistent. It does, however, make the right mouse a little bit annoying. You'll see in some of my videos, it's not very common, but maybe once every 5 videos that I upload, I actually accidentally scope in. So maybe like once every few games I do that, but it's no big deal. So that's rapid firing. The second thing is aiming. So I do a palm claw hybrid. It's mostly a palm. You can see this is about how I grip my mouse. However, you can just see by looking at my hands, and when I go on the G400, my hand's a little bit more squished. It's a little bit up tighter. Versus on this, my hand is more, you can see, look at where my pinky finger is. I'm a little bit more relaxed on the Ikari, and that's just because of the wider shape. Now, a lot of people would rather say that they can actually aim better with this. Rocket Jump Ninja on YouTube, he's a great mouse reviewer. he wants mice that are a very long, slender, and then not really narrow, but kind of a medium width. What he says is a 2-to-1 ratio of length to width. This at all is not a 2-to-1 ratio. This is really wide, but I just like that. And on top of that, it makes my grip, so when I end up gripping this in game, I'm actually not so much. I was doing a bit of finger tipping when I'm doing precision aiming in a game, maybe like sniping, or if you're shooting at something far away. You end up, instead of doing arm motions or even wrist motions, you end up doing fingertip motions. And fingertipping on the G400, I feel like I have a little bit less control because of the way my thumb has to sit in that comfort groove, and because of the ridge on the side here, as well as it's a very high mouse, and has kind of a larger butt to it, so sometimes if I'm finger tipping, I'll feel it kind of hitting the inside of my palm, which throws me off a little bit. Versus this, if I fingertip this, I can really, it's a weird fingertip because I have my pinky here, ring finger here, right and left mouse there, and then my thumb here. So it's still a fingertip, but it's a very it's a fingertip like this, not like this. It's more wide. And I find I can aim better like that with this kind of a shape. I mean, this also is nice too, because then when I'm using a desktop, I love how fat this mouse is. So if I'm like video editing, or if I'm watching YouTube videos and I'm on the computer for a long time, this is not at all fatiguing. I love that. So that's that. I also like the glossy top to this versus the more slippery top to me. I like the glossiness. The thumb button placement is a little bit better for me, so you can see on the side here, if I want to hit either of those buttons, I can just kind of shift my thumb upward, and I can hit either of them. On the G400, however, because there is this ridge along right here, I have to physically move my thumb upward, like a ½ inch, and that is a little bit bothersome. If I'm in the middle of a battle and if I'm having to combat roll and shoot, if I have to move my thumb like this and then back down, that's an instant in time that I don't really have my thumb to control my mouse movement at all. Versus this, I kind of always am in more control. And then, again, this is the last point with aiming. So the grip is better on the Ikari for me, and also the sensor's a little bit better. So even though this technically uses a better sensor, I do a little bit better with the prediction that is in the A3060 sensor. So prediction is, if you were to go into Microsoft Paint, you use the pencil tool, and you try to draw a perfectly horizontal line, you're going to end up with a little bit of jagginess if you use like this. However, a mouse with prediction, which most mice have, it's only kind of higher end, quote-unquote flawless sensor mice that don't have this, the mouse will detect that you're trying to do a perfect horizontal or vertical line, and it'll recognize that, and so your line will look more like straight, 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 maybe a little messed up than straight, 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 a little bit down, but mostly it's kind of uncanny how straight it can get it, versus if you use, something like a wheel mouse optical or whatever that has no prediction or a very, very little amount of smoothing. It's very jagged looking. So the prediction for me, drawing more horizontal and more vertical lines, I feel like vertical not so much, but horizontal, if you're tracking an enemy across the map and you're tracking their head, it's very easy to that prediction helps a little bit with keeping your cursor level with their head, and you don't have to correct for vertical elevation much. So I switched from the MX510 to the G400 because the G400 has that quote-unquote better sensor, and because it has the 1000 hertz pulling rate, which is better than the MX510's 125, so you can actually rapid fire better on the G400. But it's the same shape and more or less pretty much the same sensor, except the MX510 has prediction. And I noticed when I switched, my aim, particularly when tracking enemies moving, like sprinting and stuff, I was a little bit less regular, I guess. So when I found out that this had smoothing, or when it had prediction rather, I kind of found that as a good point to it. This will change based on everyone's personal preference. So I will still recommend the G400 over the SteelSeries Ikari to most people. However, the Ikari works better for me, and that's where I use it. So I guess thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this video was informative. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to respond as quickly as possible. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next.